and welcome to today's online webinar on the UCD School of Agriculture and Food Science graduate taught programs in the areas of environmental sciences. Today we're going to be focusing on our Masters in Environmental Resource Management and the Masters program in Wildlife Conservation and Management. These two cognate programs are suited to students who are interested in environmental sciences, the climate agenda, management of our natural resources, mitigating the impact of agriculture on the environment, and much more. My name is Damien Dempsey, and I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Tracey, who's the Program Director for the MSc Environmental Resource Management Program, Dr. Barry McMahon, the Program Director for the Wildlife Conservation and Management Masters Program, and two graduates from our program, Sinead Doyle, who's an inspector of the Office of Environmental Enforcement with the Environmental Protection Association, and Amelia Keane, an environmental consultant with Malone O'Regan Environmental. So I'd now like to invite my colleague, Dr. Tracey, the Program Director from the Masters in Environmental Resource Management Program, to speak a little bit about the program. So welcome, Saoirse.
Thanks, Damien.
Saoirse, good to hear from you, and thanks for joining us today. Maybe just to begin, I wonder, would it be possible to describe how this particular area is relevant in the times that we live in? I suppose our natural resources and managing our natural resources has arguably never been as important.
Yes, Damien, I would agree. So increasingly, we're becoming aware that the resources we rely on are finite. As humans, we understand that we're impacting our environment, and they're in a delicate balance. So in this program, we often talk about spheres, so the atmosphere, the biosphere, and how the actions in one sphere may impact on the other. So really, the world needs professionals that have an understanding of how to protect these resources. So whether that's soil, water, and plants, to meet some of the challenges we're facing. So things like food security, climate change, biodiversity loss. And this program as well is really important because it aligns very closely to some of the agreed objectives of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, so especially zero hunger and life on land.
So thanks, Saoirse, and I suppose with that sort of context in mind, maybe you could describe the program just for those who are interested in it in terms of the structure of the program, the duration, what types of modules might they expect?
Okay, so the Taught Masters in Environmental Resource Management is a one-year full-time Taught Masters program. It's a well-established program. It's been running for over about 25 years now. And the program centers around the sustainable use of resources, specifically things like soil, water, and plants. And a unique aspect is really, it's got a really key agri-environmental focus. So we use a lot of agricultural case studies. In terms of who teaches on the program, there's involvement from academics across UCD and externally. So these are world-class researchers in the areas of agriculture, soil science, biodiversity, wildlife conservation, geography, environmental law, policy and management. So you can see that it's a really diverse and exciting program.
So there's very much a kind of a multidisciplinary environment or learning environment based on how you've described it there. And I guess I know the applied nature of the program is something that maybe differentiates this course a little bit from some other master's courses that are out there. Could you maybe just comment on that and field trips perhaps and the extent to which that's a component of this program?
So yeah, it's an applied program. The students have to take a variety of different modules, but one thing that's quite special about this program is there's modules such as practical research skills. So the students get a real hands-on feel of practical research skills. The class sizes are quite small, so a lot of the modules are taught in small computer labs. So modules such as GIS and data analysis for biologists, and we also have several field trips throughout the course as well.
And I guess for people who are logging in today, careers is obviously something that prospective students are very much interested in. Could you maybe comment on the types of roles that are frequently occupied, I guess, by your graduates?
So yeah, in recent years, we've had graduates finding employment in various roles. They've gone into several different sectors. So whether that's consultancy, working for government, working for industry, or going on to do further research. So in recently, we've had graduates that have gone on to work for the EPA, for county councils, acting as sustainability consultants in commercial companies, or in policy or advisory roles as well, and conservation.
Right, and I think Sinead will maybe mention her particular experience in the EPA following this. I guess in terms of eligibility, again, you know, there are students looking who will likely have made an application to this program who are coming from you know, science and non-science based degrees. What types of degrees do you accept, and have you accepted in the past on this course?
Okay, so this course is quite unique in that we accept applicants with science degrees. So typically we get applicants from degrees such as with agriculture, zoology, biological sciences, geography, but then we've also recently accepted, and in the past as well, graduates with from non-science backgrounds. So if you have, say, a BA in human geography or social policy, we have applicants, they're eligible as well. One thing we do look at though is work experience. So if you have any relevant work experience, but often we find that then the resulting cohort of students is very diverse, and the students we've fed back in the past that they've enjoyed working with peers that are from different backgrounds. So a lot of the modules might be taught in small groups and they have to kind of actively work together. So it kind of mimics maybe the environments they'd find themselves in careers going forward. So that's always thought of as a real positive and advantage for this program.
Right, and that makes sense, and I'm sure it adds to the learning environment and the learning experience with people presenting with different skill sets as well. I guess maybe just to finish up then, Saoirse, from your own perspective, as the program director, your own particular area of expertise. I know you've got a very active research profile. You're collaborating with a number of international universities. What's your own particular area of expertise?
Well, I call myself a soil and a plant scientist. My own background is environmental science. I research how plants interact with soils, and I use imaging techniques to uncover new insights into soil biophysics.
Great, well, thanks for that. Well, we might introduce Sinead now. Sinead is a graduate from the program, and Sinead, I mentioned at the beginning, I think you're working with the EPA as an inspector with the EPA at the moment. I wonder, just to begin, perhaps, would it be useful to maybe just introduce yourself, your undergraduate degree, how you heard about the program, where you're from? I think might be useful.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Damien. Yes, so my name is Sinead Doyle. I'm from County Wexford. I started off my studying career, I suppose, in Mary Immaculate College in Limerick, and it wasn't a real specific science undergraduate that I actually carried out. It was a BA Liberal Arts, a BA in Geography and English. So I actually graduated as a secondary school teacher in English and Geography firstly. I suppose at the end of my career, or at the end of my study in Mary Immaculate College, I kind of felt I hadn't reached my final destination as regards to my career. I felt I had something more to give. And when I reflected back on my journey that I travelled so far, I suppose there was a roadmap laid out for me already, because I had a huge interest in the environment. I completed my major research project in Mary Immaculate College on the attitudes towards wind energy in the southeast of Ireland. So yeah, when I reflected back, I saw that my interest lay within the line of the environment. So from that point on, then I decided to look towards masters within the field of environmental studies. And of course, University College Dublin would have been my first preference of a college to attend. University College in Dublin, they're top ranked for graduate employability. So this definitely would have been my preference to go to college. So I suppose from that point on, then I would have contacted UCD and the School of Agriculture and Food Science, spoke with staff from the faculty, spoke with students that would have went to UCD before and completed the course. And from that point on, my final choice wasn't a hard decision to make, because UCD was the college that I was wanting to go to, and this course in environmental resource management was the course that I was wanting to study.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that's where I ended up.
And Sinead, actually, what's really interesting about that is that when you often speak to prospective students of master's programs, in many cases, in my mind anyway, you've got a bunch of students who use the master's program to complement their undergraduate studies, and you've got another bunch of students who look to choose a master's program perhaps to go in a different direction. And it sounds like you've certainly used this to complement your undergraduate degree. What year, Sinead, did you undertake the program?
I took it in 2017, so 2017 to 2018.
And again, just how was the experience for you? Is there any particular unique aspects of the program that you would like to comment, or that you enjoyed perhaps, that you'd like to comment on?
Yeah, well, I suppose from the outset, the course itself was wonderful, from every point of view. The broad aspect of subjects that I had the chance to study, the people that I met, the staff within the school itself. There was a huge scope of learning within the subjects, from GIS to data analysis, virologists, One Health, human impact on the environment. So there was huge scope of learning within the course itself. And the one thing that I took from my course, from studying the course, would have been the attitude and the tool used by the lecturers in UCD on their teaching process. So I suppose it wasn't just tied down to sitting into a lecture hall and being lectured that way. We had a variety of learning techniques, from being inside a lecture hall and then going outside to excursions, field trips, and the environment itself at UCD. We travelled on different trips, like to Alliance Estate within Dublin itself. We travelled down to County Wexford. We visited Johnstown Castle as part of the catchments group there as well. So yeah, I really liked the learning technique that was used by the school in UCD itself.
Great, and I mean that builds very much on Dr. Tracey's earlier points around the applied nature of the programs and application of the science and applying that to the real world. So that's very much part of the experience, clearly. And I guess if you fast forward then now to your working world, you're an inspector with the Environmental Protection Association. That's a pretty important role. Could you maybe just describe that for us, what it is that you do?
Yeah, well, I suppose before being employed with the EPA, I was offered a job as an environmental technician with the local authority in County Carlow. So I had three main roles in the local authority in County Carlow. I would have worked on the waste enforcement group within the council. I also worked with climate action and sustainability. So in 2018, I was given the task to develop Carlow County Council's climate change adaptation strategy on behalf of the council itself, the internal workings, and then the external community in County Carlow, of how we would adapt to the challenges faced by climate change in the future. I would have been then a part of the waste enforcement group in Carlow, where we would have enforced policy and legislation within environmental compliance within the county, and to ensure that there was no, I suppose, illegal or unauthorised activities being carried out in Carlow itself. And then we became champions of the Sustainable Development Goals programme in 2019, when I coordinated that group within the council also. I suppose only as of the 20th of April, just gone there in 2020, I was offered a job as the inspector within the waste enforcement within the EPA in Inniscarra in County Cork. So my role at the moment, I suppose, is solely working within the area of waste enforcement within County Cork itself. So within this job, my role mainly is to ensure compliance, environmental compliance within licensees, within the waste sector, the food and drink sector, and the pig and poultry sector. So yeah, I'm delighted to be able to be working for one of Ireland's best environmental regulators. It's always been a dream job of mine to work with the EPA, and I'm sure, and there's no doubt about it, had I not completed the course and the Masters in UCD, I would never have gotten to where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fascinating. That even the level of experiences that you've had in a variety of different projects and areas in such a short space of time, Sinead, sounds really interesting. When you think back to your class on the program, where have some of your classmates found employment, or would you have some idea of where that might be?
Yeah. So myself, along with two other colleagues, were actually we're working within the Environmental Protection Agency. So the three of us have pursued careers down that road. I suppose I know another classmate of mine is now working within a technician in conservation in Canada, and I know another individual is a project manager with Environment.
Sinead, listen, that's really, really useful advice, I think, and thank you for your contribution. And I think the one of the points that you mentioned, which has come up in other webinars, is that they are challenging programs, but you do get out what you put into these courses. And as I said, I think that you described and summarised that really, really well. So thanks for that. The next program, I guess, that we'd like to feature as part of today's webinar is the Masters in Wildlife Conservation and Management, also delivered within the Environmental Sciences section of our school. The program director for this area is Dr. Barry McMahon. Barry is a conservation biologist working within the context of agricultural production systems. So Barry, thank you for joining us today. I know your mic is off there at the moment, Barry, but Barry, your enthusiasm and passion for this subject area is palpable. This is an emerging, growing subject area that's growing in importance globally, particularly at the current times. I wonder, would you maybe comment on that sort of growing level of importance or recognition for this subject area and for this program? I find it a fascinating area.
Thanks, Damien. So the course has been running for 10 years, and it's for over 10 years, I should say, and it's a blend of sort of wildlife management and the epidemiology of zoonoses, so diseases that humans contract from animals, and trying to manage those aspects with human-wildlife conflict. And if you look at the situation that we're in at the moment, given that we're living through a pandemic, certain commentators, particularly the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, would say that the emergence of COVID-19 is really the symptom of a biodiversity crisis across the world. So people might say, what does that mean? Well, it means basically, in terms of actually understanding where there's different processes going on globally. For example, over the last, say, 50 years, so since 1970, wildlife has declined by 60% globally. Human population has gone from 4 billion to 7 billion. And emerging infectious diseases that never affected humans before, like Ebola, COVID-19, Nifon virus, have emerged. And it's pretty clear that they're not unrelated, or that they are very related. So the way in which the course in wildlife conservation and management is structured is that we adopt what's known as a One Health approach, where we look for the integration of different disciplines, like wildlife management, the epidemiology of zoonoses and human-wildlife conflict, to understand how these diseases emerge and to understand how we can manage our wildlife resources. So we heard from Saoirse there talking about managing resources. It's the principles at a higher level are very, very similar. It's about managing resources, wildlife resources, within an agricultural context.
Barry, and I think the way you've described that and how the importance of an integrated approach, in terms of your overview. So I guess if you bring working on that basis then, and you look at the program to take a closer look at the wildlife conservation and management program, what types of modules might students expect to be exposed to on this program?
So the best way to look at the modules is to look at what sort of skills and what sort of disciplines you acquire and how you can use them to solve problems. So the disciplines that we would deliver to students would be, wildlife conservation, One Health, which deals with epidemiology of zoonoses, there would be some overlap with some of the modules that seriously mentioned in terms of human impact on the environment. And then in terms of some of the skills that we would try and impart to students would be to understand how to analyze and interpret data and data analysis, GIS, conservation genetics and genomics, but really importantly is actually the ability to communicate as well. And that's something that there's a huge emphasis on, particularly if you're dealing with integration and transdisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. So you're dealing with people with who come from different backgrounds. So being able to communicate exactly what you mean and what your component or your specific skill or your specific discipline can bring towards bringing about a solution is really hugely important and can't be understated.
And again, you work very closely with external bodies. There would be external groups contributing and lecturers contributing to this program. And also, if I'm right, that there's experiences to visit conservation projects, perhaps and management projects as well. Would it be useful maybe just to provide a little bit more details around some of those areas?
Sure, yeah. I mean, both within UCD and outside UCD, there's a huge level of collaboration. So obviously the course is firmly grounded in the School of Agriculture and Food Science, but we would collaborate with colleagues both within the school but also outside the school, in School of Biology and Environmental Science, in School of Public Health, School of Veterinary Medicine. So that's important to show, because UCD is a comprehensive university, so we can actually gather a lot of information or a lot of skills from our own colleagues. So that's the first thing. In terms of external bodies, we heard Sinead talking about her experience in the EPA. I suppose that our emphasis would more be on the biotic end of things. So I would deal with people in the Department of Agriculture, people in National Parks and Wildlife Services, just to name a few, and also to conservation NGOs like Birdwatch Ireland. So there would be external speakers come in from these organizations, as well as independent consultants who would explain, their stories, which might necessarily have gone through UCD, but you can always learn from listening to other people's experiences in that respect. And in terms of the field visits, we would use Lions Estate, because it's, again, 50% of the land use area in Ireland would be improved agricultural grassland. So this is a very, very good model for that. And we would also use sort of other conservation projects, such as that being run by the National Parks and Wildlife Services down in Bora in County Offaly. And they're just two examples of the field sites that we would use.
Again, it reinforces the focus on the applied aspect and the applied sciences and coming up with solutions and real world solutions. I know that's very much at the heart of your thinking and of the wider team that's involved with delivering the programs. I guess, Barry, moving forward again into the career opportunities type space, could you maybe describe the types of roles and companies where graduates perhaps have found employment in the past, but even maybe given how the world has changed and how this area is growing in importance, maybe the anticipated career opportunities available for graduates from the program?
Well, I mean, we're going to hear from Amelia, so that so she can talk a little bit more about positions like ecological consultants, and that would be a very good position to obtain, a very, very good position to obtain. So that's one example. There are positions in wildlife managers, and there are individuals who have decided that the experience with One Health and with the epidemiology and zoonoses had sort of sparked an interest in veterinary medicine that they really never realized existed, and that's happened in a couple of cases. So people have diverted into that career. As I mentioned, I have collaborations with environmental NGOs, and they are former graduates who work as conservation officers within those environmental NGOs. You have individuals who work in sort of research, who've gone on to carry out research careers. There is one person that springs to mind who works in the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, which isn't necessarily something that you would associate with wildlife conservation. But again, and I hear this from a lot of people who have come back and talked to me, it's not necessarily that the masters brought them to a specific career, but the skills that they learned enabled them to get the career that they wanted. And once they realized what was available. And there's one individual who springs to mind who had a very, very interesting background in terms of the fact that he studied as a nurse. He came in, did the wildlife conservation management, and then went on to is still carrying out a very successful career in medicine. And he said he would never have got the position that he had if it hadn't been for the research projects that he did studying antimicrobial resistance in wildlife. So the careers are sort of wide and varied. So they're obviously hugely important, but for the prospective student who's looking at this, there's certainly an opportunity to create careers that don't currently exist in Ireland, most certainly, because the field of emerging infectious diseases, particularly from wildlife and as human, domestic animal, wild animal interface, as that gets closer, there are going to be more and more situations by which these diseases arise. So being able to understand and, dare I say, anticipate situations like that would be incredibly valuable, not only as a profession, but also to society.
Yeah, it strikes me as you're speaking, Barry, that the program would be a very good platform for those to develop their career in a wide range of different areas. So, I mean, that's been really helpful. Similar to the question that I posed to Saoirse, I know you're very, very strong on this in terms of eligibility and welcoming students from very different backgrounds. Would you maybe just comment on that for students who are wondering, am I eligible for this program, and how am I going to benefit, or from coming in with maybe a science degree or from a degree perhaps that is a little bit more removed from the biological sciences at the moment? Yeah,
I mean, the classic sort of student is the biological science student who has come through and has always had an interest in this area. But then you do get other individuals who have graduated and sort of maybe take a shift in terms of their interests. So they might have a BA in geography, and I've had some extremely successful students. Indeed, one of the students who's working with me currently on a PhD, Amy Gray, has started her career off in geography and has progressed extremely well. So I'm not going to say that it's not helpful if you have a biological science. It is a science-based degree. That's a given. But there is scope for individuals who have got demonstrable evidence that they have got the capabilities to be able to deal with what the program has to offer in terms of the science background, but also in terms of the level of interest. And like Saoirse has mentioned before, mature students who have potential mature students who have experience in the workforce and understand, what it's going to be like in terms of working hard, like Sinead mentioned. I've never had any problem with students like that, and they have always got a lot from the program and been very, very happy with what they have left with in terms of both the skills, the disciplines, and indeed the experience.
Barry, I think we might move on just in the interest of time. Thank you very much for that. Next, I suppose I'd like to welcome Amelia Keane. And Amelia, you're a graduate from the Wildlife Conservation and Management Programme, and as I understand it, are an environmental consultant with Malone O'Regan Environmental at the moment. So welcome, thanks for joining us. And again, maybe similar to Sinead, you might begin by just letting us know a little bit about yourself, your undergraduate program, and why you decided to choose the Wildlife Conservation and Management Master's Program.
Yeah, so I am originally from the States. I moved to Ireland in 2010 with my family. I finished school, secondary school here in Dublin, and then I went on to England to do my undergrad in zoology in Royal Holloway University of London. I graduated in 2016, and then I actually took a year out in between the master's and my undergrad because I wasn't 100% sure yet what I wanted to do. So I think that actually really helped me to sort of figure out what masters suited me best. I decided the UCD Wildlife Conservation Management Masters was the one that I wanted to do because I knew I wanted to work in either ecology or conservation or something along those lines. And I just felt when I looked at all the programs in Ireland, essentially, that this program specifically, it covered a broad enough range of topics that I could get something, whether it was in specifically ecology, conservation, just some form of environmental management, or, you know, it was detailed enough as well that I wouldn't have an issue getting any of those, because I did feel like some other masters, potentially, they cover so many topics that I didn't think I might get in-depth enough understanding of those topics to then be able to immediately go on into a career. Whereas with this one, it's very targeted towards Ireland and the European environment. And I knew I wanted to work in Ireland because this is where my family is. This is where I was hoping to start my career. So the fact that, you know, your field work was in Ireland, the experience, the skills you get, the understanding of legislation, it's very much so directed towards the Irish sphere. And I really thought that that would be something that would be beneficial for me to work off of once I get into a career, and it was.
Right. And when you look at the actual experience of the program itself, there is an opportunity then to, I guess, personalize the learning experience with the dissertation. And the dissertation itself, what area did you choose to focus on with your dissertation?
So my dissertation was on the land use conflict between the conservation efforts for the hen harrier in Ireland and forestry. It went very well. It was actually used as part of a larger paper that is now published. So, you know, getting the opportunity to do that, that also is something that really benefited my CV, and it was something I could talk about in an interview as well. And it just really gave me that edge above other candidates that were applying for the same position.
Great, and quite a topical area as well, Amelia. Any other modules that you particularly enjoy or aspects of the program that you feel might be worth mentioning to prospective students?
Yeah, so I mean, like Sinead said, there's a lot of overlap between the wildlife conservation and the ecological resource or environmental resource management masters. So we had a good number of modules together. But I really thought that the practical research skills course was really great to just be able to get out into the field and to really get that experience. And as well, we had the habitat evaluation module where we did a trip to Burr. And in my career, I'm constantly doing habitat surveys. So to be able to undertake that and to really understand what I'm doing, it's been so beneficial for the work that I'm doing now. And the other module that it was really tough, and I didn't like it particularly at the time, but I really took away so much from was the module literature review. So, you know, when I was doing my undergrad, unfortunately, I got a lot of bad habits where when I would be writing a paper, I'd kind of like fluff up my text and, you know, I'd waffle a little bit, try and reach the word count. But this module, it gave you a topic, you had to write a paper on it. You may never have seen or heard of that topic before, but you had to know how to find the correct sources to make sure that they're legitimate. And then you had to write concisely, clearly, and professionally. And, you know, you were given opportunities to get feedback, and it really did just strip away all the bad habits that I had. It's made my writing skills, you know, to a really high standard. And in my job, I'm constantly writing reports. So that's one of the skills that I think is absolutely essential.
And I suppose that very much builds on what Barry had been saying earlier about the importance of communication skills, and particularly when you go into complex areas like you're now working in. and you're trying to communicate those projects to a multidisciplinary team, perhaps, and to different stakeholders. And that probably brings us nicely into your current role with Malone O'Regan Environmental. Could you maybe just try and describe, maybe, I know you've touched on it already, but the types of experiences you're involved with there?
Yeah, so I am an ecological environmental consultant, and in consultancy, there's a wide range of sectors that you can go into, from, air quality, water quality, noise, contaminated land, but I fill the ecological role. So as an environmental consultant, we work with private and public clients, so they can range from county councils to private industries. We primarily work on commercial developments, so we assess potential developments for any and all potential environmental impacts that they might have, and then we undertake surveys to get a baseline of the current state of the site that the proposed development wants to go into. So those surveys, they can range from bat surveys, badger surveys, otter surveys. Honestly, if you think of any kind of animal or anything like that, we survey it. And the results of those surveys, we use them to help influence the design of the development. So it could be, if the area is a high suitability for bats, we might alter the lighting scheme of the development, and they really take forward our ecological impact and input to make sure that there are no impacts. And as well, we have to write reports to support these planning applications. And there's a number of these reports, they're legal documents, so you have to make sure that it's all factual, it's all professional. And yeah, we have to make sure that we're in line with all the environmental legislation, both European and Irish legislation. We have to ensure that there's full compliance. We get to write a range of reports, from identifying Natura impacts, or some fun stuff like biological and biodiversity management plans and enhancement plans. So it's a wide range of stuff that we get to do, but it's very enjoyable.
It sounds fascinating and very rewarding, I'm sure, as well, because I mean, when you see how your contribution ultimately shapes the a larger project, it must be really, really interesting. Again, your classmates, I know there's a very strong sense of community among the class in wildlife conservation and management. Just what sort of areas of employment, or where have they found employment?
I believe a lot of people have decided to go into consultancy as well. Some of them as ecological consultants. I think other people are working more kind of in contaminated land and waste management. Some people have gone on to do PhDs in further education. Other people are working with the National Biodiversity Data Center. So, it's a lot of people, it's just kind of whatever you want to go into, you can find a way in.
And again, maybe just to finish then, Amelia, any advice to prospective students? Is there anything that you would kind of, when you look back now, that you might kind of reflect and say, I might have done differently, or maybe this might be something to consider?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what Sinead said, like you really get in, or you get out what you put in. I think one of the best things that I was told during the master's was actually something Barry said to us right at the beginning. He took us on this walk around UCD, and he told us to essentially find a field skill that we like and try and master it. If you're interested in trees, Ireland doesn't have that many native trees, so try and be able to identify all of them. Try and identify the most common bird songs, the most common birds that you can find. Like if you're looking to become an ecological consultant or to work in ecology, one of the best things you can do is to have a solid foundation on field skills. And you can do that whether you're doing the master's, your undergrad, or you're working. Like it's just, you can go on and teach that stuff to yourself even, so.
And thanks for that, Amelia, and thanks for your contribution. I think what we might do now is actually take some of the questions and kind of frequently asked questions that we receive from prospective students. The first one, unsurprisingly, relates to COVID-19 and will the programs go ahead for this academic year? So I might maybe perhaps take that one. We obviously recognize that COVID-19 is impacting us all, and there's great uncertainty for prospective students at the moment. The advice is constantly changing, and the best point of or source of the most up-to-date information is available on the UCD website. That's www.ucd.ie. There's a section there devoted to frequently asked questions, whether you're an international student or whether you're a student who's applying within Ireland or within the European Union. So we would direct you, I guess, to those FAQs. We'll also put those up in the chat function in the chat box now, so you can access those, but that's where you locate the most up-to-date information. That's probably the best approach. Again, I'm looking here a question in relation to the application deadlines. Again, that's a kind of a general question. The application deadlines are open and they remain open at the moment. I think both courses are filled on a first come, first sort of, once there's a certain quota or number of places available. Once those places have been filled, the course is then full at that point. We do accept conditional offers or make conditional offers to students who have not yet, so students may be taking their examinations and awaiting the results. At this point, you can apply to the program. The advice would be to apply to the program. You will receive a conditional offer, and then that's subject to your performance in your degrees. We do have a larger number of applications on both programs compared to previous years, so I think the advice would be to get your application in on the program at this point. A question, Barry, for yourself in relation to just maybe a sample of some of the dissertation topics from wildlife students in recent years.
Okay, so if you go back to what I said earlier, there's sort of three major themes that are interacting, if you like, throughout the program, in terms of wildlife management, epidemiology and zoonosis and One Health, and then human wildlife conflict. So you heard Amelia's example of a human wildlife conflicts thesis, which, as she said, worked out pretty well, and that was done with collaboration with our forestry colleagues in UCD. So that was really, really nice in terms of how that worked out. Other projects would deal with sort of biodiversity in an agricultural system. So one of my own areas of interest would be sort of farmland birds and how different farming activities and different farming management systems would impact on farmland birds. So that's been a sort of as a broad title for a couple of theses that have been carried out over the last number of years. Also looking at sort of zoonotic pathogens in wildlife. So last year there was a student who looked specifically at a type of toxic E. coli, VTEC E. coli, highly pathogenic, very nasty bug that can be carried. It's mainly carried in food producing animals, but it does occur in wildlife. And as part of a Department of Agriculture project, the student was able to carry out a short dissertation on that, looking at how deer and how gulls found by the coasts, how they operate as reservoirs or carriers of this particular pathogen. So those would be the types of projects that we would undertake.
Listen, that's really helpful, Barry. And I guess a question, Saoirse, maybe for yourself. I'm looking here on completion of the program. Will I have the skills to apply and advise how ecosystem services such as nutrient cycling could promote sustainable land management? Quite a specific question.
Yeah, well, simple answer, yes. 2 modules I'd want to draw that person to would be soil, plant and water resources, which is worth 10 credits, so a double module. In that module, you'd learn about nutrient cycling and some of the threats to soil. And a second module you would do is called biodiversity and ecosystem services. So yeah, I would definitely say at the end of the course, and also we have evidence of some of our graduates who are now working in that area as advisors and consultants. So yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess we kind of mentioned, and it came up, I think, from Sinead at the beginning about UCD and UCD being Ireland's global university. Maybe a question, Saoirse, for yourself. International students, would there be typically many international students enrolled in the program?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something every year we have international students. We also have a really good successful track record with the Irish Aid fellowships as well. So yeah, so often we have international students, and We use Ireland and agriculture for many of the case studies, but this is definitely a global course, and we use case studies from around the world as well.
And I suppose that maybe just to add to that comment, that UCD is very much Ireland's global university, and the whole concept and the whole operations in UCD is very much driven by the fact that it's about bringing the best of Ireland to the world, and also bringing the rest of the world to Ireland. So there's an increasing number of international students enrolled on the UCD programs. I think we might finish and complete today's webinar with that final question. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking time out to contribute today. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to contribute. We'd like to also thank everyone who has joined the webinar, or those who are taking the time to view the webinar on one of our social media channels, and also to those behind the scenes who helped to organize today's webinar. So thanks for applying to the webinar. We hope you enjoyed it, and best wishes with your future studies. Thank you.